So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about what do we mean by person-centered thinking, but I don't want you to think it's a substitute for training. When we actually teach people how to use the person-centered thinking skills, it's a 2-day course. And we have people practice them, and practice them, and practice them, so that they can really walk away with competency. So this is going to be more like a quick overview and some illustration of how some of it works. And it is really about these core concepts of what's important to and what's important for. And when we started thinking about this, and it started because we were discovering that the more we taught people just how to write plans, the more we wound up with better paper rather than better lives. And we started going, what do we need to teach? We said, well, we need to teach the balance between happy and safe, happy and healthy. But when we started really digging in, what we discovered was that happy and healthy is not a big enough basket. When we talk about happy, we're missing things like fulfilled. We're going to get to that in a minute. But there's actually research out there, which won't be shocking to some of you, that couples with small children at home are less happy than couples who have no small children at home. This did not come as a shock to many of you. And it is amazing what you can publish. But the important thing is they found that while they were less happy, they were more fulfilled. And that there's a distinction between happy and fulfilled. But when we started looking at important to, we also recognized that simply having space on a form where we go, what's important to you, doesn't give you the information that you're looking for. That you have to teach a whole set of discovery skills. The skills that help people really know. And some of these skills are pretty straightforward, and some of them take a little bit of work. And all of them get trapped into becoming forms. And sometimes I think what we just need to do is just recognize how it works. So if we were looking at your relationships, we could do something called a relationship map, a simple relationship map, which is just a series of concentric circles divided into quadrants. And at the top we would put family. And we would ask you to tell us how close you feel to family members. And you're looking at emotional distance, not blood relationship. So I bet there's a number of people in the room who have an aunt or an uncle that's closer to them than a sister or a brother. And those of you who have multiple sisters and brothers, some of them are closer to you than others. Just the way human relationships work. And when the family gathers around the table for Canadian Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for whatever you celebrate with family, are there family members you hope you will not be sitting next to? Some of you are naming them. That's a dangerous practice. So there are people that you feel closer to than others. And we ask people to fill this out, and each quadrant has a label. But then we ask another question. Who should we be talking to? Who would you like to have contribute to the plan? And if you think about those family members, how many of you have a family member where you go, please God, don't ask them? How many of you have a family member where you go, oh, if they contributed to my plan and had control over my life, it would be hell. Now, I am taking an extreme position, but, I can think of my own family where I'm going, oh, please don't ask her. And other people will be going, absolutely. But when you're doing this with the people that support the person, one of the things you'll see is the way that this works is families here, friends are down here, people who are paid are on both sides, but this would be work or a day service, and this would be home. People who use services frequently have more people who are paid in their life and fewer people who are not paid. If we had you fill this out, which we do in training, you would go, I don't know what to put here. I don't really have people in my life who are paid. And you wind up with a hairdresser, a dentist, a doctor. But if you turn to the people who use your services and you say, who's closest to you? Many, many of you would have people who are paid as people who are closest to you. And we rely on those people for information. So that leads you to a whole other question. Who should I talk to versus who should I listen to? And you need to sort who should I talk to from who should I listen to. And we teach 3 questions, which seem to do a really good job of sorting who to listen to. So if I was doing this with Amy, I would be saying to the people who are closest to her, what do you like the most about Amy? First question. Second question, what do you admire the most about Amy? Third question, when's the last time you had fun together? To tell you how this can work, I was doing this training in California, and the person we were doing the plan with was a guy named Tony. And Tony is this amazing man. He's very tall, somebody I literally look up to. And he makes an entrance into a room like Kramer from Seinfeld. But unlike Kramer, he has the positive energy of Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. So if you were to merge Kramer and Tigger, you would get Tony, who doesn't communicate with words, but boy, does he communicate with his behavior. And I'm thinking, what an amazing man. And I talked to the manager of the group home, who's known him for 7 years, worked with him for 40 hours a week. And I said, what do you like the most about Tony? And she said, hard question. He's no trouble in the bath. I went, really? What do you admire the most about Tony? She said, he helps with dressing. When's the last time you had fun together? I'm not paid to have fun with Tony. I'm paid to help Tony have fun. Another one of my personal definitions of hell would be being dependent on someone who doesn't have a personal connection with me. So she was somebody I was going to talk to, but not somebody I was going to listen to. She would have information about what's important for, but not what's important to. And I went and talked to the woman who was working with him during the day in a traditional day service. And very, young woman, probably on her first or second job in her life. And I said, what do you like the most about Tony? And she said, how sometimes you just have too much fun on the weekends, and you come in dragging, going, how am I going to get through this day? And she said, you know, I just think I'm going to get to spend the day with Tony. And he just fills you with this amazing energy. And you go, today's not going to be a problem. And I went, and I'm going to listen to you. I don't even have to ask the other two questions. No. You have that personal connection. Those three questions will sort pretty consistently who to talk to versus who to listen to. And if you are dependent on other people, you want those people who have a personal connection to give you the information that's going to go in the plan, to give you the rest of the information that's up there, to look at those other discovery skills. And you find out, you want people to be sensitive to rituals and routines, and we do a whole training on the importance of rituals and routines. But you don't have to ask everybody about them. You just need to be aware that for some people they're very significant. And they're pieces of everybody's routine that have to do with quality of life. And we talked about mourning. But how about when you're sick? All of you have had the flu at some point in your life, and you felt really awful. Well, it turns out when you feel really awful, you tend to be in one of two camps. The first camp is the cave bear. Leave me alone, throw food in occasionally, but stay the heck away from me. How many cave bears do we have in the room? Yeah. And then there's the other side. I feel so terrible. Will you please give me some tea? I'd like some toast dry, please. I'm out of Kleenex. When you really feel bad, you want to be nurtured. How many people are in the nurture me camp? And here's the problem. Either camp is just fine. The problem is when we don't know what camp you're in. And I'm a cave bear, you're a nurturer. You'd be coming in going, can I get you anything? And I'd be going, get out of my life. But stay in hearing in case I need food. You would be going, don't you love me? You're staying away from me. I'm going, damn right. And when you have a partner, hopefully you've learned those things. So regardless of which camp your partner is in, you're prepared to support them when they're really feeling sick. Although I have to confess, as a cave bear, it's hard to be nurturing for somebody whose head is just filled with disgusting content. And you're going, here's another Kleenex. But if you love them, you do. But with the folks that we're working with, do we know that stuff? Do we know all of those things? Do we recognize how important it is? And then you see good day, bad day. One of the most powerful ways to figure out what matters to a person is find out what makes a good day for them and what makes a bad day for them. And regardless of severity of disability, good day, bad day really works. There are techniques for learning it that you need to know if you're doing it. Because you don't just go, so tell me what a good day is like for you. You start out the conversation with, what's an ordinary, typical day like for you? What makes it better? What makes it worse? And you chunk time up. There's ways of doing it. But then you begin to really learn what matters to the person. There's something up there called the 2-minute drill. And that's something you use to kind of find out what are the top tips. What are the really important top tips? And let me illustrate this one with you by getting you to do just a little bit of work. I want you to talk to somebody at the table, and one of you will be the person talking, the other would be the person listening. You're doing it in pairs. Unless, like this table, you have an odd number of people, but you'll sort it out. It's a challenge you can rise to. But I want one of you, the person talking, to pretend that you are a new hire, and the person you're talking to is your supervisor, and your supervisor just asked you, what are the things that will make up good days for you? What makes for a good work environment for you? What are the things that, when they're present in your work environment, you're going to have good work days? What are the things in your work environment that are going to cause you to have bad days? And what could your supervisor do that would make you have more good days? What would make for more? What makes for good days? What makes for bad days? And what support helps you have more good days? One of you is the talker, and the other is the listener. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes. But did you learn a lot? Did you learn useful things that if you were the supervisor, you would be going, boy, it sure would be good to know that. And yet, you literally had 2 minutes. Well, actually, you had 3 because I'm generous. But you had basically 2 minutes. And so when you help people focus and share information that way, you can learn a lot about what's important too, and how to best support if the person is someone you should listen to. Again, you have to find those people who deeply care. But this particular exercise is something we're going, anytime you have somebody new coming on your team, have that conversation with them. And if you've got a good team, have it with the whole team. Have the whole team do that, because if I'm on a good team, I want to have more good days, and I want my team members to have more good days. And in many cases, you go, I never knew that mattered to you. That would mess up a good day for you. So that's another skill. Then there's reputation. We have discovered a couple of things. One is the way we introduce people with disabilities is awful. Because mostly the first time you meet the person is you meet their paper. You tend to meet paper before you meet people. And when you meet the paper says, this is Sarah, and she's a woman with the following disabilities and the following problems. And when that happens, it sets your head. You go, oh, somebody with Down syndrome. Well, there's imagery for me. Somebody with the bipolar disorder. Oh, there's more imagery for me. No. And it's useful to know some disability labels because it helps with understanding what's going on. But for the most part, it's not. And if I was going to introduce you, I'd like you to meet Lewis. He's a man with many problems. And we have a list. And all of your friends are going, yeah. Instead of saying, I might like you to meet Lewis, he's a man with a remarkable sense of humor and a contagious smile who knows how to be warm to people, who's a traveler and a golfer. Whole different mindset. So part of what we want to do is learn what we like and admire about the person and have that be the very first thing you read about the individual, the very front end of your records. So if you've not learned to do one-page profiles, you need to sign up. And again, almost all the stuff I'm talking about as far as person-centered thinking training, I'm not trying to advertise me. I love to teach it, but you have local experts. Why hire somebody who needs an airplane when you can hire somebody who uses a car? But one-page profiles should be the very first thing you see about a person. And the very front end of that one-page profile is what we like and admire. But it also is about how do you deal with negative reputations? How do you deal with the person who's labeled is kicker, biter, spitter? How do you deal with somebody where they go, oh, no, we don't call them kickers. We say he has physical aggression using appendages. But how do you begin to address that? So we teach people there's 3 questions you should always ask whenever somebody has a negative reputation. Are there circumstances where the negative is a positive? What would you call it in those circumstances? How many of you, if we asked your friends, they would say, oh yeah, stubborn, that's her. How many of you have stubborn as one of your characteristics? Yeah. So what do you call stubborn when it's a positive? There's a whole set of them. Principled, persistent, determined, tenacious. Have you ever worked with somebody who's been labeled manipulative? Do you know what that's called when it's in somebody who's valued? Persuasive. It's also called leadership. If I'm a good leader, if I'm a good trainer, supposed to be a thought leader, I'm going to get you to do stuff with what you listen. Isn't that manipulative? Does it reflect something that's important to the person? Stubborn. Stand by my principles. Important to me. If you had a deeper conversation with me, you'd discover I can only do work that supports my values. I could be making a bunch more money teaching almost the very same stuff to a bunch of for-profit companies. But I would rather not. Last question, is it sometimes really a negative? And if it is, what do you call it? And if it is, how do you support it? So we don't say somebody who has a little problem with fire likes a warm, cheery glow. We don't gloss over stuff. A true example is I was working with this woman, and the person who wrote the plan said she puts things away for a rainy day. She steals stuff from her housemates. You need to know what she does so that you can get the stuff back to her housemates and not have her housemates want to kill her. So don't pretend it's something it's not, but you can deal with it in a respectful way. You don't have to say thief. You can say she takes things from her housemates without permission that don't belong to her. And this is what you do to get it back. And at the end of every day, you say, Martha, got any stuff that isn't yours? And Martha will smile. She'll go, not much. Could you give it back? Uh-huh. And her housemates have to know that. And one of the housemates said, I'm not putting up with that. So we're going, okay. Your room has a lock on it. Would it be okay with you if you locked your room when you left it? Because that's where the stuff is. Another housemate said, it's kind of fun. Like a game. So really different, but you deal with it in an honest way. And then the last one on that discovery list is communication. It's a way of recording how people communicate who don't communicate with words. And any of you who have worked with somebody who doesn't communicate with words and you love that person and you've worked with them for 6 months, you know how they communicate. So it's not learning how they communicate. The people doing direct support typically already know. It's that it doesn't get written down. And then staff turn over. And the new person comes in not knowing. Have you ever seen the look on the people who use services' face when they get a new staff person? Oh, staff are so hard to train. How long is it going to take her to get it? You need to write it down. And you also need to recognize that people misinterpret things. I was working with a woman named Rhonda. Rhonda is an amazing staff trainer. Rhonda has a reputation of being outspoken, and she doesn't communicate with words. So they said, you know, we need you because we have problems on the weekend. On the weekend, she doesn't cooperate with dressing. I go, but she does on the weekday? And they said, yeah. We need to fix this. So I said, let me listen to the person who works with her on the weekday. How does this work? So I talked to Allison, and Allison said, well, what you do is you go and you knock on Rhonda's door, and all the women who live in this house need physical assistance getting going. And you knock on Rhonda's door and you open it, and Rhonda will have the sheet up over her head. I said, well, what does that mean? She said, it means go away. So I said, what do you do? She said, and she looked at me like, what do you mean, what do you do? She said, you go away. And you go help Sally. Sally's always ready. But she said, you need to remember to knock on Rhonda's door first. And I said, after you help Sally, what do you do? And she said, you go back and knock on Rhonda's door. And I played this little game. I open the door as I knock. Because it's so funny, you can see Rhonda putting the sheet up over her head. And I said, what does it mean that time? She said, this still means go away. So she said, yeah, so I go away. And I help Helen. She'll be ready by then. And then I come back and knock on Rhonda's door the third time. And unless Rhonda's sick, or there's something she really doesn't want to do, she will be up on her elbows looking at you. And I said, that means she's ready? She said, absolutely, it means she's ready. So listen to that behavior. Does it remind you of anything you do? Snooze alarm. Choose using us as a snooze alarm. How many of you need 2 snooze alarm hits in the morning? Pretty common. So I asked her, well, some of you are going 3, 4. But I asked the staff person, how much extra time does it take to do this? She said, altogether? I said, yeah, altogether. She said, I don't know, under a minute. And the weekend staff said, we don't have time for this. You want us to coddle these people. And I turned to the manager and said, actually, I think you need new staff. Because this is somebody who sees themselves as a caretaker, not a supporter. And wants things organized for themselves. So that's the discovery skills. Then, once you've done that initial discovery, you need to keep the learning going. So the 3 skills that we teach, 4+1, working, not working, learning a lot. And by the way, all of these are on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, put in my name, spell it correctly, you will get a 5 or 6 minute blurb on what the skill is. If any of you have insomnia, it's a guaranteed cure. You all have to write progress notes? Well, I've been an expert witness in lawsuits in the U.S., and I discovered I would get cartons of progress notes delivered to my house that I had to read in order to say where we were in the support of people. And I discovered progress notes come in 2 flavors. There's the rubber stamp flavor. You can come up with 5 rubber stamps that will cover 80% of your notes. Ate dinner, slept through the night, did his activity. What was that? No issues. Or had an incident, but don't tell me of what. Then there's the other flavor, the novelist. As I took George out the door, the sun broke through the clouds. The scent of fall was in the air. As we were walking, the wind stirred the leaves. And you're wondering, will George ever reappear in the note? So what they're not recording is learning. What they're recording is compliance. So we teach a way to record learning. Now the problem is it's a skill masquerading as a form. And if all you do is introduce the form, you get the same old stuff spread across more columns. And the 47th time I've taken you to Tim Hortons, have we learned anything? We probably got done learning a while back. So you need to be able to think about, does it make sense to replace all or some? What makes sense, and how do we make sure it's used as a skill? Working, not working. Second most commonly used skill we teach. You've all had situations where there's conflict, where somebody says, you say, Mary would like a job, and Mom says, wouldn't be safe? And you go, yes it would. She goes, no it wouldn't. So you're going nowhere, because one of the core principles of negotiation is you cannot negotiate over principles. You have to break it down. So we look at what's working and not working from perspectives and teach people how to do that. And suddenly we find the emotional temperature drops and people can be cold. And then the last one in that series, the 4+1. Have you ever gone into a meeting and discovered the 80-20 rule was working? 20% of the people talk 80% of the time. They do not have 80% of the wisdom. So how do you begin to capture that? One way is to use this, which is a project management tool from Xerox. You put up on the wall, what have we tried, what have we learned, what are we pleased about, what are we concerned about? Those are the 4 questions. Tried, learned, pleased, concerned. As people come in, if it's a meeting about Sarah, you get people to write up on the paper. And suddenly, everybody's wisdom is up there. And then you can start having that conversation. Given what we learned, what should we do? And this can make a huge difference in people's lives. There's a woman who would only get about 20 feet from her house, and then she'd want to go back. And they were trying to get her to go out into the community, and they would be going, Mary, this is your favorite thing to do. Don't you want to go? Don't you want to go? Can I help you go? And she would go, I'm headed back. And doing this, they finally figured out that Mary was scared and needed to trust the people who she was working with. So if you said to Mary, the first time she said, I want to go back, you had to say, okay, let's go back. And you'd make it back to the door, and then she'd say, okay, now we can go. But what staff were doing was trying to kind of encourage her to go. And she was going, you can't trust her. And it was only through doing this kind of work that they figured it out. There's a woman I worked with named Pam. And Pam had this amazing gift. She could fake a heart attack. And you would be convinced she was going to die. And she discovered if you fake a heart attack, you get out of whatever it is you didn't want to do. And handsome young men come and take your shirt off. It's a win-win. And we're going, we need to stop this. And I'm going, wow, good luck to us. And they, tried all kinds of stuff. And what they finally figured out by doing that 4+1 was we need a way to be able to document that they're not real heart attacks. And they make portable electrocardiograms where you can put the chest leads on and the person can wear it. And they did that, and she had a heart attack, and sure enough, the cardiologist was able to say, her heart rate didn't go up at all until those handsome young men came. But there was a second problem. Pam was going to an extreme behavior because what we were doing with her during the day was so repugnant to her that she felt like she had to have a heart attack. So we needed to find other stuff for her to do. And they said, oh, she is so hard to figure this out with because she comes in the morning and she tells you all about her evening in exquisite detail. And when she's done telling you about the evening, she has to tell you about it again in the same detail. And she needs to tell you about it 3 times. And staff are going, I can deal with it once. I can manage it twice. After 3 times, I'm starting to have negative feelings. And so people were going, well, where would that be okay? Where would that be okay? Any idea what they figured out? I'm sorry? They found the Alzheimer's unit, which had lonely people. And one woman in particular bonded with Pam. Couldn't remember Pam's name, but she couldn't remember most people's names. She called everybody dear. So she'd go, how are you, dear? And Pam would go, I'm fine. Let me tell you about last night. And she'd go, oh, please sit down. And she would make all the appropriate noises while Pam was saying, what happened. All of the things that would say. She was genuinely interested. Pam would get all the way done. And she'd say, thank you for telling me that. And Pam would go, did I tell you what I did last night? And she would go, please go ahead, dear. Because her conversion from short-term to long-term was pretty weak. But she was lonely. She really wanted company. And in fact, we're not entirely sure if her conversion from short-term to long-term was as bad as we think. Or if she was just going, delightful young woman who enjoys spending time with me. Do we care? So Pam got to be a volunteer at this unit a couple days a week, and people look forward to her coming because they had somebody who was very pleasant with them. to share time with them. And figured it out using the 4+1. Two more, and then we're going to go into a couple of them in a little more detail. Matching and donut. One of the single most powerful determinants of quality of life is match. And we're going to look at this in some detail in a minute, so I'm not going to go into it now. And the other one is the donut, which we're also going to take a look at. So let's go there. But first, let me spend a little more time on important 2 and important 4. You see satisfied, content, comforted, fulfilled, what I've been talking about. But you also see relationships, and then you see status and control. One of the things we frequently forget about is that humans are status-seeking animals. All of us who are human, I assume that includes everybody in the room, have status needs. All the people you support have status needs. You ever walked into a new date service, with a big room, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Want me to show you around?" And the person who's saying that is somebody who uses services. Did you ever have that truly cringe-worthy experience when somebody comes up to you and says, "Hi, I'm Jason, I'm high functioning"? I die when I hear that. It's a terrible term. But for Jason, it was status. Have you had people tell you when you say, "What do you want to be? What kind of job do you like?" "I'd like to be a pilot." And I don't know about you, but I fly 100,000 miles a year. I am hoping that the people who become pilots are really remarkably good at moving that airplane around. And that they have good rules about who gets to be a pilot and who doesn't. But what is that person telling me when they say they want to be a pilot? About 1 time out of 10, they want to be a pilot. 9 times out of 10, they're looking for status. Pilot, astronaut, Hollywood actor, status. If we can find them status, pilot goes away. One guy in Pennsylvania said, "Oh, I want to be a pilot." When we really talked to him, when we really listened to him, what he wanted was guy status. We got him a job at Home Depot. We got Home Depots here. Now, the fact that there's a whole set of remarkably competent women working at Home Depot didn't matter. It's the home of tools, guy status. And he got to drive that 2-story forklift. Whoa. Major status. So he had a job that met those status requirements. One of the reasons why we should be emphasizing employment for people is status. What gives people status? But humans will seek status in other ways. We pay attention to it. So there's a whole list up there. Rhythm and pace of life. How many of you hate to be rushed? Pretty common. How many of you know people with disabilities who hate to be rushed? Have we written it down? Do new people know it? Do we tell the people, "Oh, Jason hates to be rushed, don't do it"? So all of those things go into what's important too. Important 4, to be valued. And remember that just because it's important for you doesn't mean it's important to you. Have you ever walked into a nursing home and seen somebody sitting there in the common area with a soiled shirt? And did it make you angry? Because you felt like that person's not being valued. Whereas the person sitting there, the guy sitting there might be going, this is my favorite shirt. And you're going, then you should have two of them. So that one can always be clean. And safety, again, includes free from fear. Health includes well-being. And one of the things that people forget is none of you do anything that's important for you unless there's a piece of it that's important to you. And the connection may not be obvious. How many ex-smokers do we have in the room? Many. How many of you quit because you got pregnant? Anybody? Yeah. How many of you got nagged into submission by your kids? Now, how many of you said, this is way too expensive? Can't smoke anywhere except outside. Winter's pretty brutal. There's actually data that shows frequency of purchase of cigarettes against cost. Cost goes up, purchase goes down. Pretty direct correlation, not health. And when you ask people about health, well, and did any of you start smoking going, this is good for me? You know, those days were gone in the 50s, when the cigarette company was saying, Camels are the doctor's choice. You got to be able to figure out the connection. How many of you are working with somebody who should lose weight? Pretty much all of you. Yeah. How many of you have tried to lose weight yourself or successfully lost weight yourself? Did any of you do it because you went to the doctor and the doctor said, oh, your body mass index? Usually it's a bad mirror moment. Or, oh, those pants don't fit the same way. There was a woman I worked with, and we were trying to help her lose weight because she had gained so much that she had the front end of congestive heart failure. And the reason why she had gained weight so quickly was because the agency was focused on her losing weight. So the more they zeroed in on, you should lose weight, the more she said, oh yeah, watch me put this in my mouth. And we were actually reading about food stealing, which I find a bit bizarre. How many of you snack in your own home? Yeah. Well, does your partner come to you and say, food stealing? Some of you apparently have odd partners. So we are trying to help her lose weight, and all of this diet stuff doesn't work. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, an endocrinologist, and he said, you know, Michael, all weight loss comes down to either eat less or move more. And you're telling me that eating less isn't working. See if you can help her move more. So the agency that I was working with said, okay, we'll go buy an exercycle. And they put the exercycle in her bedroom. What did she use it for? If it was so predictable, why did they do it? And then they said, okay, we want her to lose weight, so we'll have a behavior program. If she wants to see her favorite TV show, she'll have to pedal. How well do you think that worked? I thought they were lucky to save the TV. So one of the women that worked there said, you know, I belong to a gym that's just for women. It's called Curves. And we'll go there, she can be comfortable, and we'll exercise. So she took her to the gym, Curves. First thing that worked at all, but it required a huge amount of encouragement. One of the guys said, well, let's try my gym, Coed. She walks 15 feet inside the door of that new gym and goes, ooh, hunks. And she's looking at the guys lifting. And the fellow who took her, he is so brilliant, because he said, Sarah, here's the deal. There's a rule here. You cannot stare at the people exercising unless you yourself are exercising. Then it's okay. And she said, you're kidding. And he said, no, it's a rule. She said, where? And I see it. And he said, no, it's not a written rule, but it's a rule in every gym. She said, well, how does it apply to me? And he said, no problem, come with me. Took her to the treadmill. And you've all been in these big gyms, right? Got a big mirrored wall. You can watch yourself on the treadmill, or you can watch the guys lifting behind you. So she is now on the treadmill at 1 mile an hour, watching the guys lifting. What's the new problem?
She doesn't want to leave.
Getting her off the treadmill. The woman has congestive heart failure. You don't want her to die on the treadmill. Back to the physician who said, this is great, and it's heart rate. As long as her heart rate doesn't go above this, she can be on there as long as she wants. Well, put your hands on the treadmill, and it gives you your heart rate. So pretty easy to adjust. One of the other people who, on their staff, would be on the treadmill next to her, would glance over, make sure it's there, help Sarah go faster, slower. And after 6 weeks, any of you go to a gym routinely? And if you do, you look at the newcomers with a jaundiced eye, because most of them are, there for a week and then they're gone. They're there for 2 weeks and then they're gone. If they're there for 6 weeks, you go, you're one of us. And once she went there for 6 weeks, she could go hang with the guys who were lifting. And the guys who were lifting would be going, hey, Sarah, you are doing great. That is amazing. You are here every day. You're on that treadmill. You are doing great. And Sarah would be going, so are you. And she lost 70 pounds. And it's because they were using this way of thinking. Nobody does anything important for them unless there's a piece of it important to them. And we don't have time, but I can tell you 5 or 6 more stories about how that works, how it has worked for people. But let's move on and look at the skills. When you actually get people to use important to and important for, when you actually use that routinely in the way people are thinking, it obviously helps the person. And we have education systems that are not very good at teaching critical thinking. I don't know about the political ads in your place in Canada, but the political ads in the US require suspension of all critical thinking. Our current campaign is so far into the gutter that it's into the sewer system. And if you look at the ads, you go, oh, I need to not think at all. Just believe. So you want people to learn critical thinking, you want people to be able to look at this kind of sort, and you want people to have a learning culture. But when you look at that donut that I was talking about before, it's called the donut because the guy who came up with it is an English management philosopher named Charles Handy. And if we were really true to his spelling, it would be D-O-U-G-H-N-U-T. But he says in every job in the information age, there are core responsibilities and then areas of judgment and creativity. Core responsibility, get it right or get in trouble. Any of you work with somebody who uses a G-tube for nourishment to eat? Looking for any creativity? You carry the G-tube and getting somebody to eat? I hope not. I hope you're just doing it the way you were trained to do it. Any issues, get kicked up to the medical folks. We are not looking for creativity. But if you want that person to become part of the community, you've got to try stuff. And if everything you try works, you should come up here and give this lecture. Because when we're trying to connect people, more things don't work than do work. And you got to learn from it. So you've got to know, where do we want people to just get it right? And where do we want people to be creative? And what is not their responsibility, because that's where burnout comes from. So that, when you get people to do it, remember that 3 golden rules of management? This is how you do the first golden rule. Create clarity about performance expectations. Here's the stuff where I expect you to just get it right. Here's where I want you to try stuff and we want you to learn. Here's what's not your usual responsibility. And there's no such thing as perfect creativity. If I say, be creative but don't get anything wrong, I just told you don't be creative. But if you don't create boundaries about responsibilities, I get burnout. And it creates a culture of accountability. Have you ever been in a house where accountability went out the window? And you walk in the house and then say, whose job is this? And the answer is, well, it depends. And you're going, what? Depends on what? Barometric pressure? And they're going, no, it just depends. Well, that means there's fear-based management. Because if we fuzz up responsibility, nobody can be blamed. Matching. Told you we were going to take a look at that. And if you take a look at this, the left-hand column, supports needed, goes with the right, the column to the right, the skills go with it. So if somebody has a seizure disorder, you want the supports and skills that go with helping somebody who has a seizure disorder. You don't want somebody who has breakthrough grand mal seizures out with someone who doesn't know what to do. If somebody has really severe diabetes, I expect people who are taking that person out to recognize when their blood sugar is crashing and have bits of candy with them. Somebody needs to be transferred. I don't know about you, but if I ever need to be transferred, I want somebody trained to do it. I don't want somebody going, let's see, if I heft you up, it'll probably be okay. So those two go together. But personality characteristics, those are really individual. Did you know that you all have buttons? They were installed shortly after birth by people who allegedly love you. Some of whom push them for sport. Have you ever worked with somebody who pushed your buttons? Bad match. You're having fond memories. Who do you work best with? What's the personality characteristics of people you work best with? What are the personality characteristics of the people you support? Who do they work best with? What's the best match for them? What personality characteristics? And you need to not only list the ones that need to be present, you really need to capture the ones that need to be absent. Because if something's not present, you can cope with it. But what are the behaviors that just drive you up a wall? Those are the ones that need to be absent, because you really have low tolerance for it. And matching works between the people who use services and the people who provide them. Match also works for who's living with who, who's spending time with whom. And shared common interests. If you both like the same stuff, time passes faster. And when you do matches, we've discovered several things. Turnover goes down. Because if I'm spending time with somebody I like, if I'm enjoying my time, I want to stick around. If I'm spending time with people who drive me up a wall, I'm going to look for another place to do that, another place to work. And there's a decrease in incidents. Have you ever had somebody do something where you went, that was a high-risk behavior, why did you let that happen? And the response was, it was his choice. And you go, well, I don't know about you, but I start actually having my mother's voice appear in my brain. Did your mothers ever talk to you about if somebody was jumping off a bridge, would you jump off the bridge? Sometimes it's a bridge, sometimes it's a roof, but it's always a high place. And so I'm going, so if he wants to play in traffic, he'll say yes. What's up with you? But often what it is you've been working all day with somebody who drives you up a wall. And at the end of your shift, that person wants to do something that's high risk, and you're sitting there going, it's his choice. Whereas if somebody wants to do something that's high risk and you love the person, you're going to go, oh, wait a minute. And you're still going to try to help that person do something that they'll enjoy, that'll potentially give them that same rush, whatever it is they're looking for, but isn't high risk. So incidents go down. Makes sense? We looked at the working, not working. Here's what we've seen about what it does and what we see. Critical thinking, better problem solving. Clarity about what needs to say and what needs to change. Have you struggled to find meaningful outcomes for people? This is one of the ways you can do that. And let me show you one more, and then let's take a break. That's 4 plus 1. Try, learn, please, concern. And by the way, you just had enough training to use it. This is one of those skills you can just walk away with, but there is a trick. You have to use it 3 times. The first time you use it in a meeting, people would go, what training were you at? The second time you use it, they'll go, it didn't go away. The third time you use it, they'll go, where's the marker? But people have to get used to it in order to really be able to use it. But you don't need much training, it's pretty clear. You've got to focus, you've got to put a question up there, about what do we try? So it could be, what have we tried to help Jane stop stealing? If Jane is somebody who shoplifts. Could be just since the last time we got together. What have we tried? What have we learned? What are we pleased about? And it helps people feel listened to. It helps build that learning culture. And it makes a much more effective use of meeting time.